The Honorable Derek Kilmer, Senior Vice President for U.S. Program and Policy at the Rockefeller Foundation and former U.S. Representative. Derek is leading efforts to engage domestic and global leaders, civil society actors, businesses, and institutions to advance issues core to the Rockefeller Foundation's mission. Derek served 6 terms in the U.S. Congress, passing landmark economic development legislation to help economically distressed communities. Kilmer served as the chairman of the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress, which passed over 200 recommendations to make Congress work better. Can you imagine that? We were talking earlier, and he said he couldn't have left at a better time, because, or maybe at a worse time, because things are not working as well. And thank you, Derek, for leading some of those reform efforts. Prior to being in Congress, Derek worked as a consultant for McKinsey & Company and for a nonprofit focused on economic development. He earned his undergraduate degree from Princeton and a doctorate from Oxford. Congressman Kilmer, come on up.
Hi, good evening. So, I don't need Mountain Dew, I do not need candy, I just need to hang out with all of you. I filmed some of the shenanigans exercises before, and I sent it to, I have a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old. My 19-year-old responded, "They seem awesome." And my 15-year-old responded, "Very hype, Dad." You all are very hype. I want you to know that. So, you are very hype. There are at least 2 giant birds in this room. There are like 2 colors of pom-poms and some bells. I think I saw like the largest magnet ever coming in. So that. So I've been asked to speak for 15 minutes on empowering communities through partnerships and innovation solutions. Frankly, that feels like home turf to me, not the hardest speech I've had to give. I will tell you the hardest speech I've ever had to give. I was the Veterans Day speaker at South Colby Elementary School. The assignment was to speak to preschool through 5th grade for 20 minutes. And I showed up at this gymnasium packed with preschool through 5th grade. And I went up to one of the teachers that I knew and I said, 20 minutes? Screwed. And she gave me the best advice I've ever gotten in 20 years of public service. She said, "Derek, here's the deal. Say whatever it is you got to say it in whatever amount of time you got to say it in, but if you see any of the kids start to pick their noses, wrap it up." So I want you to know, if someone near you starts digging for gold, I'm bringing this in for a landing, okay? I'm going to be very responsive. Listen, we are here tonight not simply to celebrate cities, but to celebrate communities. Communities that are showing this country what's possible when we bring people together, when partnerships are real, when innovation is local, when engagement includes everyone. What's possible is creating more of the stuff we want and less of the stuff we don't want. More resilience, fewer harmful disasters, more housing, more economic opportunity, more locally sourced food, more transportation solutions, fewer derelict sites, fewer damaged places. You are rejecting the false choice between economic prosperity and protecting the environment. That's what the people in this room have done, and so much more. So congratulations for that. So that is a thread I've seen time and time again in my time in Congress and community meetings and now at the Rockefeller Foundation. Just by way of background, I grew up in a little logging town on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. And it crashed when I was in high school. Over time, it went from a place that was exporting wood products all over the world to one that very sadly was primarily exporting young people. Jobs were disappearing and people were divided, and everybody blamed somebody else. The environmental community was frustrated about logging practices from decades ago, and the folks in the timber industry were angry that their livelihoods were in jeopardy. And I learned something important, and that is you can't solve hard problems unless you involve everybody. And doing the hard work of understanding where other people are coming from. Sometimes that means walking in their shoes. Sometimes it literally means taking a walk with them. Seriously, there's research that shows that when people physically move together, they're more likely to build understanding. Even diplomats are trained. If talks stall, go take a walk. Add some snacks and you basically have a bipartisan breakthrough. So that brings me to a walk I'll never forget. I ran for Congress in 2012, and one of the things that bummed me out more than anything else was that in the 20 years since I had graduated high school, the dialogue between the timber industry and the environmental community really hadn't progressed. It was still sort of the Hatfields and the McCoys and people, lobbing bombs at one another. And it was a dynamic that wasn't working for our community. The economy was suffering, forest health was suffering. We had far too many lawsuits and far too few solutions. So when I got in office in 2013, we decided to take a risk. We said something that many of the folks here in this room have said, which is if you want things to work differently, do things differently. So we launched something called the Olympic Forest Collaborative, where we invited the timber industry and the environmental community into the same room. We added in some community leaders, some municipal employees, some county employees, some tribal leaders. And these were folks who many of whom had never met except in courtrooms where they were suing each other. And I'll be honest with you, at the beginning, it was mostly an exercise in trying to keep people in the room. It had strong courtroom energy. And then we tried something different. We went for a walk. We literally went for a walk in the woods. The timber folks showed some of the harvest techniques that they had used and how they were working to try to ensure economic sustainability and keep the lights on in their mills. And the environmental community said, here are some things you could do that could protect ecosystems better and protect habitats better. And it was powerful, and it was informative, and it was inclusive, and it was difference making. So fast forward a few weeks after we took the walk in the woods, we have a meeting in a conference room at the University of Washington, Tacoma, and something incredible happened. One of the environmental leaders said, that was a really good field trip. And she said, in fact, I went back to my organization, we took a vote. We decided to take all the money that we had set aside for lawsuits, and we are going to use them to help you guys hire a forester so we can cut more trees, but do it in a sustainable way. I gotta tell you, I almost fell out of my chair. And since then, that Olympic Forest Collaborative has launched multiple successful timber sales. It has protected ecosystems together. It has stopped treating meeting rooms like courtrooms, and it has changed the game. And that's just one example of the type of work that we're celebrating tonight. That effort showed that economic opportunity and environmental sustainability aren't mutually exclusive. They're two sides of the same green, valuable coin. And then when we are inclusive in engaging people, when people are at the table, environmental sustainability can be real and it can be lasting. That's exactly the kind of work that the Rockefeller Foundation is proud to support. And that's why I'm here. Because the Rockefeller Foundation believes something bold, that the world's toughest challenges are solvable. We don't believe in parachuting in solutions. We believe in partnering with communities and empowering them. and standing behind local leaders, not trying to stand in for them. That's our theory of philanthropy. We don't just fund programs, we bring people together. We don't just hope change happens, we bet on it. And we use every tool we've got. So take Blue Conduit, a small startup that the Rockefeller Foundation supported that's tackling a big, old environmental problem, lead pipes. During the pandemic, we saw a whole bunch of cities, including Buffalo and Flint, Michigan, and others, see a big spike in lead exposure because people were home more, they were using more water, they were drinking a whole lot of it. And Blue Conduit used artificial intelligence to predict where pipes had lead. No digging required, and it actually saved cities money and time. And since then, they've mapped over 1 million service lines, serving more than 2 million people throughout this country. And that's just one example of what happens when we invest in community-centered innovation. We also just launched something we called the Big Bets for America Fellows, where we're investing in more change makers like many of you here in this room, people who are creating jobs and protecting health and strengthening civic life from the ground up. Because we believe solutions are not going to fall from the top down, that they will be built brick by brick and block by block by folks like you here in this room. Building is hard, particularly at a time where it's easy to tear things down. In 1968, the former cabinet secretary by the name of John Gardner gave a graduation speech at Columbia University. And he talked about America's declining faith in institutions in 1968. And he talked about the importance of what he called institutional stewardship. And he said institutions need loving critics. He said institutions suffer from two problems. Either they have uncritical lovers who deny the sort of life-giving improvement that institutions need to get better. He said institutions also suffer from unloving critics, people who treat institutions and communities like the piñata at the party and seek to tear them down. You know, we've got a lot of unloving critics in our country. These days it's easy to bash institutions. I know that I was part of an institution that, according to recent polling, is less popular than head lice, colonoscopies, and Nickelback. But Congress is not alone in this. The public has lost faith in the media. It has lost faith in the business community. You know, it's lost faith in religion. You know you're in trouble when we've lost faith in faith. But you know what people still have faith in? Their local communities, civic leaders, you. That's what people have faith in. Because you are out there building and not blaming. You're solving problems, not just ignoring them or pointing at them. You are loving critics of your communities. And that's what stewardship looks like. You're doing things with your communities, not to them. And tonight, you're not just finalists for an award. You're reminders of what democracy looks like when it's built from the ground up. When public servants and civic leaders and nonprofits and young people and everyday change makers lead with empathy and inclusion and persistence. So, to all of the finalists tonight, congratulations. You have earned this. And my encouragement to you is keep engaging, keep participating, keep involving all of those folks. Even if initially you have to have that strong courtroom energy and look for opportunities to get people to walk in each other's shoes. You have shown you can do that. You have shown what civic engagement looks like when it's done right. Let me just end on this note, because I saw some nose picking. I read about tonight's nominees. They sent me all the information, and I have to tell you, it gave me such hope for our country. It really did. Hope that you are all doing work to make things better. Hope that our country will be stronger because of the work happening in your communities. Hope that we can build environmental sustainability through civic engagement, just like that forest collaborative in my neck of the woods. You give me hope. You know, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs once said there is a difference between optimism and hope. Optimism, he said, is a passive virtue. It is the belief that things will get better. He said hope is an active virtue. It is the belief that together we can make things better. He said it doesn't take courage to have optimism, but it does take courage to hope. Tonight, I am looking at a room full of loving critics who give me hope. People who are not just dreaming about better communities, but people who are doing the work together to make things better. So, a toast to you, to your creativity, to your courage, to your walks in the woods. Go get them. Congratulations, everybody.